Hello everybody, I've got quite a few people joining us as we go through. Shane Gilly, great to see your face. I can see Sky. I can see lots of names up here. Ashley, supporting your colleague over in WA. Hi Terry, thanks for joining us. Greg, you're going to be a founding member. It's your second go, heading for the hat trick at Workshop 3 next week. Hi Glenn, hi Donna, hi Sinead. And I think I've said, and Leah. Hi, Leah. Or is it Lee? I think we've communicated in writing lots of times, Lee, but not face to face. So thank you all for joining us today. I'll just give it about another 30 seconds in case there's any people wanting to join us. I'll get my notes set up and we'll get moving very shortly.
Hi Joe, I've just got Michael Van Dorn online here on the phone and he's having a bit of trouble getting in. Are you able to flick him another link, please?
Sure.
It would be a shame to lose one of our panellists.
I'll do it, Joe.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. And I think, okay. Are you seeing those slides in full screen, everybody? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got some new fandangled version of Office 365 on my screen, so I will trust that we've got it right. Okay, so while we're waiting for Shane, I might kick off. I've said hi to most of you. Anyone I've missed, I now can't see everyone on the screen quite as well because I'm sharing the screen, which introduces our webinar today. It's the second in our Sea Safe series, and the topic today is keeping safety alive. Before I go any further, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm meeting with you all on the lands of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains here in South Australia. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd like to pay my respects to any First Nations people on this call and also to the many First Nations, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander fishers that are part of our industry around the country. I'd also I'd also like to acknowledge our funders for the Sea Safe program, which are the FRDC and AMSA. The Sea Safe program is a program that exists to support a shift in culture in our industry. As with our Stay Afloat program, Sea Safe is a program for industry, by industry. And so, unlike other traditional webinars, Sea Safe sessions aren't about rules and compliance. Instead, they're about real conversations with industry professionals about the challenges and solutions you've encountered in leading your organisations and your teams. So, we really want people to come onto our webinars to share with each other their experiences, learn from each other, and importantly to contextualise, because we don't all operate our businesses the same way. So you might be talking, as we're about to talk, to a crab fisher, and you might come from even a post-harvest background. It's not about figuring out whether the crab fisher's experiences are not relevant to you because you're not a crab fisher. It's about listening and understanding and thinking about, how do I contextualise that person's experience in my world? Does anything resonate with me? Does it highlight for me anything that I should be looking at in my organisation? So today's topic, keeping safety alive. We've got 3 panellists with deep experience across a range of areas in seafood. Our panellists will share stories and experiences they've had in relation to this topic, including what they've learned through traditional means and through incidents and near misses, or maybe even through other sectors that they've worked in. We're having a really interesting chat with Brad before you all joined us. What they wish they'd known sooner, how they keep safety alive in their organisations, and any tips and tools that they've got to make what they're doing, or to make the rules, the activities more effective and easier, including how do they manage to fit safety activities into their busy everyday lives and schedules. So I will now introduce our panellists. They're each going to speak for 10 minutes, and during their talks we encourage you to put questions into the chat. which you can find chat on your menu panel. It's likely to be at the bottom of your screen, and for those that don't come onto webinars very often, it's like a little thought bubble. Once each panelist has shared their stories, we will work through the questions that you've been raised in the chat, and we'll also invite you to take your microphone off mute and add any additional context that you'd like to bring into play. So I'm not sure, has Michael found his way onto the call yet? Can anyone let me know? Yes, Sky?
Yes.
So first, not in order of delivery, but in order of this screen, I'd like to welcome and thank Michael Van Dorn from Dinko Tuna today. Michael is a director of Dinko Tuna. They're a wonderful tuna and an innovative tuna organisation most of you will have heard of, based out of Port Lincoln in South Australia. And Michael has been a hugely committed person in relation to well-being and safety in the workplace. The second person that will share with us today is Oliver Kroski. Oliver is part of Austral Fisheries, whose head office is based in WA, but who work in waters as far reaching as Patagonia and in the northern prawn fishery. And thirdly, Bradley Perkins from BMLK Fisheries. Bradley's got an incredibly diverse background. He's also a member of the board of the Queensland Seafood Industry Association and a huge supporter of his local community, again, both from the perspective of driving safety projects, but other well-being and industry initiatives, and boy, has that gentleman seen a lot of change. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment and invite Bradley to share whatever it is that he would like to share with us today. And as I said, as a reminder, those joining us, please open the chat, pop your questions in, and when Bradley's finished, we will ask him to contribute to answering them. So over to you, Bradley, and thanks again.
Thanks, Jo. Look, to give you an idea where I'm at in my journey in safety, I'll just give you a quick run through of my life in fishing. I've been in the fishing industry since I was about 10, working with my father's boat, mainly mud crab fishery and a little bit to do with the net fishery. Went through that from 10 till I completed school, year 12. I then completed a trade as an instrument fitter, instrument fitter. I would say safety was at the beginning. It was there, but safety was at the beginning of my journey there. You could still get away with a lot of stuff in the trades and stuff like that. Completed trade. I then finalised that, did a couple of years, and then I went back to full-time fishing. I had enough of a multitude of facets in that industry, and I wanted to be my own boss. And I went back fishing. I did fishing in the Hitchbrook Channel, mud crab and net fishing, offshore netting for a while, until about 1999. Then we decided to try our luck over in the Gulf of Carpentaria. We did a little bit up at Weipa on and off crabbing. So we went over to the Gulf, to Corumba, and we started up running out of the caravan park there, which was an interesting process. But we did that. Then we decided to buy a big boat. Big boat in the Gulf is 10 meters. That's about as big as you can go. Ran 4 licenses off that boat. Did that until 22. I had a lot of fun times there. There's some stuff that I did in the Gulf with regards to safety that I probably would never complete again, never do it again in my wildest dreams. But I'll talk about that later on. Did that to 22, then had an opportunity to go back to my trade. I went back to my trade was supposed to be 2 weeks, ended up being 20 years. So I completed 20 years in the mining industry, with a couple of gaps in there, going back to fishing from time to time, just to put my fingers back in the water per se. But I worked from the floor. I worked all the way up into middle management. So I ended up being superintendent, relief manager on a mine site, etc. So I've got a good grounding in, or good exposure from everything from the floor, the responsibilities from the floor, all the way up to anybody that's actually managing the business or managing a mine site. And it's transferable across any industry. It's just a different level, if you want to say. Did 20 years of mining, again fishing on and off, and then I got made redundant a number of years ago. I decided I'd had enough of the mining industry and all the, let's just say, all of the over the top policies, procedures, safety, etc. It's phenomenal there. And I had enough of that, and I said, I'm going back fishing. At that point in time, I thought it was great. I won't have to deal with all that stuff, paperwork, etc. Then AMSA come along. AMSA introduced a whole raft of changes to the fishing industry in Queensland, and all that came across with me. So I was a little bit happy that I had that exposure, safety management systems, etc. And I helped navigate a number of fishermen through those waters with regard. So AMSA would put out, here's a pro forma, fill in the blank spaces, and it's all good kind of document. You're covered. And then we'd go through and have a look at it, and I would ask the fisherman, are you going to do everything in this document? And the response was, hell no, I'm only doing this, this, and this. And it's like, then get rid of everything else. You don't need it in there. If you're not going to do it, get rid of it all. So we went through and I did a number of safety management systems to help family members, friends, and other people in the industry. I'm actually surprised how far that little document that I did ended up going, or people plagiarized it and took it places, etc. So that was my history in fish work history, basically. I'm just going to go off what Joe's little topics is there. What have I learnt over the years? So boredom kills safety. So if you got people that are bored, they will find a way to entertain themselves. Now, in the Gulf Carpentarian, myself and my brother and one of my good mates were stuck numerous times in the Gulf with nothing to do due to the tide not coming in for days on end, not being able to get to gear, cyclones, you name it, floods. We did everything from hunting pigs up there to having bonfires. I learned very early not to allow too much alcohol anywhere near a boat, even though I didn't mind having a drink or two myself. But it just leads to boredom, leads to safety issues, leads to actions that you probably will never do again if you had your time again. I also learnt over the number of years that safety costs. So how you fill in the end of that sentence depends on where you are in your business. So safety costs money, safety costs time, safety causes injury if you don't have the other bits and pieces in place. I had a number of arguments with a number of high-level people in the mining industry that said safety doesn't cost anything. Safety's free. My manager and I, being principled peoples, we shut down a mine site at, I think we worked it out, at $2,500 a minute profit for 2 days over a safety issue, just to prove a point. You're amazed at how quickly stuff gets fixed and changed, etc. But safety doesn't cost any money. In reality, it does. It becomes very pointed when you're running your own business. When you're working for someone, safety is costing somebody else time, money, etc. When you're running your own business, safety costs you time, money, etc. So that kind of brings me back to another item that I've learnt over the years, my 20 years of mining. So we had a number of, I'm hoping everyone's heard of take fives, your pre-starts, etc., all that sort of stuff. So I look at a take five as that's your legal obligation to your employer. It's another way to mitigate lawyers, realistically. I've had a number of instances over the years. That's what it is. There's another five. There's a big five that we did, personal big five over the years of mining. So personal big five. Oliver, you may have heard of it or come across it at some stage. It's why you're there. It's why are you working? Why are you engaged? Why are you doing exactly what you're doing? It's not about safety. It may be, but 9 times out of 10, it's not about safety. It's about making money. It's about being able to support families. It's about being able to support your habits, good habits, occupational for driving, camping, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's literally your hand, point your 5 things there. If you get injured or you get hurt or in any way, shape, or form, some of those will quickly drop off. And that's what even to this day, that's what I live by. It's kind of, I always kind of fall back to that, either intentionally or subconsciously, etc. So you're not there for yourself, you're there for other people. What happens when something goes wrong and you're not there? Like mine is kids, family, being able to support them. I'm getting to the point in my life that those kids are going, so that money comes back to me. I get to enjoy it with my wife. So you get injured, it gets very pointed very quickly. Another one, just going back to how to keep safety alive, discussions, engagement. It's a continual journey. So now I have discussions with my brother because it's my brother and myself, my father. I've got a friend that we all crab in the same area. We operate in the same area, the same creeks, and you would assume that we don't have. I would assume that we wouldn't have these conversations, but we do. Fortunately, the only person that hasn't worked in the mining industry is my father, but my brother, myself, my mate, we all work in the mining industry. So we still take safety to a level of degree, to the point that if we're all leaving at the same time, we'll ask each other where we're operating in, what area in the Hitchcock Channel we're operating in. And that's not just to know where somebody's crabbing. It's literally if somebody breaks down or somebody's not back to the boat ramp at the right time, etc., we know roughly where they are. It's also to know that if someone is working in the same area, somebody will start at the opposite ends of that area. So you only cross paths once. You're not crossing paths multiple times during the day, which has the opportunity for when you're running around in little boats up and down small narrow creeks, collisions, etc. I've had those. The only person that I worry about colliding with in the Hitchcock Channel is my brother, because we've done it 2 or 3 times. Just complacency, because you're around familiar people, you're around, it becomes complacent. How am I going, Joe?
Great. You've actually filled your 10 minutes beautifully, Brad. There's
All
a
right.
couple of questions in the chat, so
We can do that.
Pardon?
We can do that. That's easy.
So we might hold the questions just to see what comes through from the other speakers. But I loved you finishing on that word complacency. We know that, and I think we mentioned last time when WorkSafe did their big studies of what are the mindsets people are most commonly in before a safety accident or incident. The most common mindsets are rushing, fatigue, distraction or frustration, and complacency. That knowing that we've done it all before, and you think about a narrow creek or waterway, you would think that it's impossible to collide with somebody because there's not much around and you can all see each other and that type of thing. But these things can happen, and in really simple, what are seemingly clear environments. So thanks, Brad. I loved the comparisons to the mining industry. I love your realness, and we'll come back and ask you a couple more questions later. But I might move on now. Michael Van Dorn, welcome. I'm glad you've overcome the technical issues to be with us. I'm not sure if you heard me introduce you before, but Michael Van Dorn, everybody, Director of Dinko Tuna over in Port Lincoln, South Australia. And over to you, Michael. I'll let you share whatever you feel like sharing with us today relating to the topic of keeping safety alive.
Yeah, hi Joe, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this webinar. A little bit of history about myself. I started in the southern bluefin tuna fishery here back during the mid-80s as a 16-year-old, and safety at sea for me back then was basically on the job training. It was learning as you go. There was no inductions, no pre-departure drills, workshop or anything like that. It was sort of look with your eyes, listen with your ears, use common sense and ask questions if you weren't sure. So that was our safety training back in the 80s. Then from the wild catch fishery, we moved into agriculture, and I moved into a senior role with the company. And probably my first real experience of safety at sea was around 25 years ago by a man overboard incident. We had a new crew member on a feed boat who had lost his balance on deck and fell through a sea door. To make matters worse, the incident hadn't been seen by any of his fellow crew. Fortunately for that crew member, another feed vessel had witnessed the man falling into the water and picked our crew member up. The incident was reported to Safe Work SA because we did have to take him to hospital because he was in a state of shock at the time. It was reported to Safe Work SA, and it resulted in an investigation of our safety policies at the time. I was asked for our safety induction manual, which at the time I'd never heard of, let alone was able to provide. So it sort of became from this period and what followed that safety at sea, started to become an integral part of our business. Fast tracked it 25 years to now. We provide safety inductions to all new crew members, which include but are not limited, to muster drills, man overboard, firefighting procedures. All drills are documented, dated and signed off by both the skipper and crew. And in addition, we have quarterly workshops where, with all our crew, where safety is always part of the agenda. It's an open discussion with everyone, and all crew members are asked for their feedback, and where they believe improvements can be made to not only on shore but on the vessels there. We try and keep our safety aspect active in the workshops by usually inviting a guest speaker, and an example might be we've had Sky there, and to talk about mental health in the seafood industry. So we try and keep engagement with all the crew there. We also have daily dialogue with our skippers, and 2 years ago the company introduced a new software program called Seaflux. Seaflux is a cloud-based marine fleet management software package that simplifies and streamline our vessel operations there. Our skippers and admin are sent weekly emails with real-time monitoring regarding the equipment and safety checks. Safety checks that are due and are not met are red flagged, and these are red flagged until they're done and then logged on to the program. Once they're given the green flag and they know, there's basically everyone's completed their safety checks until they're due again. The program, helps keep safety training, in the minds of not only our skipper and crews, but the company's management as well. So we're having constant dialogue between everyone involved. Probably something I wish I'd known sooner is that not every crew member thinks or reacts the same as you. Some crew members require more training than others, and at the beginning I used to get quite frustrated why it took some crew longer than others to pick the tasks up. Then with time I learned that with a little bit of extra training, confidence quickly grew, which allowed them to perform the tasks they were aligned. And our skippers are seeing a lot more of this at the moment because probably like most industries, everyone's struggling for numbers, and probably close to 50% of our staff at the moment are made up of foreigners or backpackers, and language is a bit of concern. You can go through the safety drills, ask them if they understand, and 90% of the time they nod their head and say yes and sign off. And then the first place they go to is where you've asked them not to go. So we're seeing now that we are having to provide extra training. And I'll say with sea safety, you never stop learning. There's always something new happening in the marine environment. Changing regulations. AMPS has been brought up, and the game's changing all the time there. So it's not easy to keep up with it all, whilst trying to run your normal daily activities and businesses. For myself, I just try to keep safety as repetitive as possible without losing momentum. By no means is our company perfect, and there's still areas we need to improve, especially between our wild catch and agriculture sector. And give an example, our wild catch, the prawn fishery and sardine fishery, it's either quoted or seasonal, so there's generally always an end coming to it, and the skippers on our vessels are very good at keeping up with all their inductions and safety drills and vessel management. Where our agriculture sector, because it's daily, it's time consuming, it's busy, we always seem to be in that catch up mode. So that's an area there that we've identified, and we're moving to fix that problem there. But as I said, it's just it's ongoing work there that requires complete attention there. So that's pretty well all from our industry.
Fantastic. So with all of those routines and repetition, I'm just a very quick question before we move on, Michael. Do you get a bit of eye rolling? Do you get the feel that people are going, oh, not this again? Or do you find that they see that it's an important routine and they come along willingly?
Look, we probably get a bit of both. With our crew, we seem to have at our workshops there, we have the same crew that generally will speak up and not afraid to voice their opinions there, where we'll also have others there that will sit on the fence and happy just to take a backseat role, and we try to engage them in discussions. We also we use an outside consultant that comes in and presents these workshops for us, and the crew are allowed to have one-on-one time with them as well. So there might be things there that they might be too afraid or not willing to share with us, but they can pass on to the consultant. It keeps it all confidential and says these are some of the suggestions being put forward there that the company needs to look at.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And similarly, we've got a question or two in the chat for you, Michael. We might bundle all of our questions together later, but I think it's a really good example, and I'm sure Ollie will extend upon that when he speaks at the moment, and that is the repetition, and to Bradley's message as well, repetition, so that we don't fall into this place of complacency. And I think you've both also highlighted the ever increasing landscape of regulatory process, and I'd love both Bradley and Michael just to have a think about for our question time later. You've both referred to the increase in regulation and the need for safety management systems and how that's been a challenge. I'm interested in understanding, do you think it's all been worth it in terms of its actual impact on safety, and in what ways. So I'll let you ponder that for a moment at the same time as listening to the fabulous Oliver Kroski from Austral Fisheries. Oliver's got some slides to share, so I'll share my screen, and I'd also encourage, I meant to mention before, those who are comfortable, please take yourself off of, pop your faces onto the screen, because it's always easier for speakers to chat when they can see a few of the faces that they're chatting with. So over to you, Ollie.
Thank you very much, Jo. I don't know about fabulous, and boy, it's a tough ask following those two, Bradley and Michael, but I'll do my best. So if you can share the first slide I've got there, it's highlights some of our challenges that I learned when I first started with Austral Fisheries, also coming from a mining background like Bradley, with his great whiz-bang ideas about safety and standards about safety. What this actually shows is footage from one of my GoPro cameras that I took on board the vessels when I first started with Austral to sort of see what the crew do and try and develop their safety management system by asking them some feedback and what they want and need. And one day the crew were swimming in the water out in the Gulf of Carpentaria, floating about, and they said, "Jump in." And I said, "Are there any sharks in there?" They said, "Yes." And thinking I'm a good judge of sarcasm, I jumped in. And one of the boys took my GoPro and went for a bit of a swim and gave it back to me. It wasn't until sometime later, when I was back up in the wheelhouse, in the galley, having a look through some footage that I'd taken on the boat, that I found this video of someone chasing what looked like hundreds of sharks around. Then realizing that that was on my camera and that we were actually swimming in the water out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by hundreds of sharks, if not thousands. All you could see was sharks. There was no other fish in there. And that's when I sort of had to start to recalibrate my perceptions of risk and start to understand our people more, who we actually have working for us. And through finding more about the people that work for us, I found out that one of the lads that was working with us was actually a skydive instructor on his days off. So he had over 2,000 jumps out of an airplane under his belt. Some people had enjoyed cave diving in their spare time, others chasing sharks. We have colourful people with very high risk appetites. Some had been in and out of prison. One girl, when she was filling out her paperwork, actually asked if she could put Austral down as a next of kin, because she had no one in her life that she felt would bother taking a call if something had happened to her. So the types of people we have and the risk appetite is very high. And up until that point, I'd spent a lot of time talking about pinch points and trips and slips. And then I thought to myself, well, how can they possibly take me seriously when some of the things they do outside of this workplace are so hazardous and dangerous, and they don't pursue them as risk? So for us, we had to find a way of how we can level that playing field. And a way of doing that for us was to actually ask people to adopt a set of values and rules that Austral values as our risk appetite. And if you can show the next slide, Jo, we have our golden rules of safety and our values here. We can see our values. So the values and golden rules of safety came out of actually a collaboration between our skippers, crew, and staff. So what this means is that rather than people aspiring to their own risk appetites, we say, well, this is our risk appetite. This is what we value, and we ask you to accept these values when we work for us. And it simplifies a little bit, because then the expectations are set of what Austral actually values and what we perceive to be good for our people. And the next one is the golden rules of safety. So these again we asked to help them adopt these rules and these values. We included our workers. So we asked skippers and select crew, what keeps them up at night? What are some of the hazards that they perceive on their boats that they're worried about? What worries them about their crew? And then we asked them, what are the rules you would put in place to mitigate those, or to help prevent those from happening? And what we find is that you get a consensus with the answers, even though they completed them separately. They all sort of share concerns and would have similar rules. And from those responses, we came up with the Austral values and golden rules of safety. So we discussed these pre-season. We had little wallet cards made up of the golden rules on one side and the values on the other that would give out. They're posted in offices, they're posted in vessels. And this is something we speak about when we take new people on board. It's in our induction process, as part of our induction process, which is done online. And it helps to draw that line as to what our risk appetite is and what our expectations are. And the other side of that is simplifying things. I know Bradley talked about having whiz-bang safety management systems. I think Austral ones, if we look at our safety management systems, probably about that thick. To try and help people understand that and work with it, I've actually reduced it down to 1.5 pages of just what I want them to do from that task that they can do to actually meet what's required under that safety management system. We set KPIs to help them know what they need to do to meet the obligations under that safety management system, and we discuss those and get each skipper to sign off on those. And we have implemented the safety culture application, which is an online, and we use it on tablets. It's very similar to the one Michael has. What was that called? CFlux, I think Michael said. So yeah, it's a bit like CFlux. Yep. So on that, we have all our reporting forms and tools that need to be done there in accordance with the KPIs that we've set. We can also, on that, schedule things like safety meetings. We have our drills scheduled on the safety culture. So we've simplified it, made it easier for them to report, and we've really broken things down into a way that they can digest a lot easier. And also the conversations that we have before the season starts. We have a large group meeting with all the crew, and then we break it down to smaller group meetings with each vessel, and we talk about safety in those. And what's important also is who the message comes from. These days, I don't speak to the group all that much at all. It's usually done by the general managers, in that sense of what's important to my boss is important to me. So, and also the general managers and the skippers can usually relate more to their hazards than someone like me. It seems a lot more genuine coming from people that understand what they do and how they do it, and the conditions that they work with at sea. The other side of this is storytelling. Next slide, Joe.
Ooh, I should have done a trigger warning for that one.
Oh,
Look away if you don't like blood.
So storytelling is very important as well, and I think that's what this forum is about, with a sense maker and SeaSafe, sharing stories, because it has an impact when sometimes people don't know what can happen out there. And this is an example that Andy loves to use, and I can see why now. And it sort of shows what can happen there if you don't have good hygiene on the vessels, and you get sea boils and infection starts to set in. This chap was a deckhand at the time. He's now one of our skippers, and he also likes to talk about it too, to show what can actually happen when you don't keep up with hygiene on the vessel. And these stories that we share are great learnings, simply because sometimes people don't know what can happen, but when they see it, it has a great impact. Another example for us is in 2019, I believe it was, a young chap died on a vessel in the northern prawn fishery due to a sea snake bite. Now, this was the first fatality from sea snakes in over, I believe it was 100 years. So in all the time that our skippers have been alive, even our general managers and everyone within our business, nobody had heard of a sea snake fatality in that time. But many people have been bitten by sea snakes, and this young person had been bitten, told the skipper he'd been bitten, and the skipper told him to go lie down for a bit and he'll be okay. And after this fatality, we had a conversation with all of our skippers and crew, and over their time in the fishery, a lot of them had actually been bitten by sea snakes, and some of the skippers had told their crew to do the same thing, not being aware that there's a potential that these sea snakes sometimes do inject venom and they can be fatal. So that was a huge learning for us. And since then, we've implemented snake grabbers on the vessels. And it has an impact when people actually come to me and say, "Hey, Ollie, I've lost a snake grabber on my vessel. Can we please order another one? I don't want to go to sea without a snake grabber." Because since then, there are a lot of people that just simply won't touch a snake without one of those grabbers, knowing how fatal they are. But before that, we've had pictures of people wrapping them around their neck. There's even a video of me patting one as it's going past me on the conveyor when I was working on the vessels, because when I'd asked the skipper if they're dangerous, I was told the same thing. They have a dry bite. They're pretty placid. They generally don't bite. And now I wouldn't do the same thing, knowing what can happen. So that's one thing, storytelling. And safety culture actually has a section in there that's called a heads up. So when we get near misses and incident reported, we can quickly develop like a quick heads up. What happened? What are the causal factors? What can we do to prevent this in the past? And we share it, and that then gets put out to all our vessels. We have a real-time view of who's seen it, who's acknowledged it, who's done the tasks associated with that. There's even a chat section under that where people sometimes put in comments about experiences they've had in relation to such an incident. And I think that can now generate a QR code where people can view those alerts without having to have the program. So I'll test it with you guys just to see if it's working properly, and we can probably look at how we can maybe share some of these that we use. And it's very, very integral to the sense maker part of storytelling. So some of the other things that we do is, like I said, schedule drills. So through the safety culture, we schedule drills, we schedule safety meetings, schedule certain inspections and whatnot. This is a drill of our crew doing I believe it was a man overboard, not man overboard, sorry, an abandoned ship drill. The chap in the middle now is one of our skippers, and I can definitely tell you that we don't use the speed in putting on a life vest as a selection criteria, because we sometimes play games like see who can put on the life vest correctly the quickest. And in the next one here, we have an example of a shackle that was found in that state on one of our vessels. Now, believe it or not, we have a checklist that shows that this needs to be inspected, and the checklist was done and it showed that this had been inspected, and someone obviously might have passed this off as being in a good state. So for us, I would say we're not there yet, even though we have these inspections and checklists. Some people do it better than others. So we're still working at getting this part right, where we can sort of have the confidence that things are done the way they should be. And I think one of the messages here is that a lot of the time we do get the eye rolling when we put in some of these inspections in place, and the name of some of these checklists is called a tick and flick. Everyone's heard that term. It's a tick and flick. But what we're trying to get across the message is that a form or an inspection checklist, its value is in what you do with it. It's there to help you, instruct you to do or look at certain things that need to be looked at because they can become hazards. Tick and flick is not what the form does because it can't actually do itself. Tick and flick is a behavioral thing that somebody does with the form. So we try and look at behaviors, at-risk behaviors, and one of those is not doing these things properly. And that's all I have.
Beautiful. I think you had
the next
last
slide
little...
there. Also, I just wanted to say thank you also for bringing safety and awareness to the industry. When we talk to our crews, they all recognise stay afloat and sea safe. So you must be doing something right.
Thank you very much, Ollie. I think one of the things that we know is that safety and mental health and wellbeing are so very interlinked, and talking safety, talking wellbeing. If we're well, we're safer. If we're thinking clearly and thinking healthily, then there's a better chance we're thinking about our safety. And if we're safer, we're also healthier, because there's a big link between physical injury, physical illness, and an inability to physically live a typical life has a huge impact on our mental health as well. So great point, Ollie. Thank you. Wow, what a great breadth of speakers, and we've got some questions here for you all as well, and I certainly have a couple if we have time at the end. Brad, we'll come back around to you. Question that was raised. I loved the fact that you said that you've just told people if you're not doing it, don't have it in your safety management system. You know, keep it simple, I think is the message there. Sky's asked a question though, how do you make sure if you're deleting things from your safety management system, how do you make sure you don't go too far and delete something that really mattered?
Document control. I learned very quickly within the morning, and my role looking after, I had 50 people under me at one stage, just document control. So I would not delete, I would just basically copy paste. That's a document and start afresh, etc. So if I wanted to go back a couple of versions, I could go back. Something that's really important. So I work with Tara in Townsville, Tara Neal. She's an AMSA. So I've run through my document, my safety management system, my forms, my everything with her originally, and then they pretty much haven't changed. The only things I've really done is added to it. I've got forms in there, the same as you, Oliver. They're tick and flick exercises. Unfortunately, that's what they are. But they are stuff that I do, like in the morning. So yesterday morning, I'll give yesterday morning. Yesterday cost me a day's crabbing because I have my routine in the morning. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I have my coffee. I don't operate without my coffee. I go through, and I'll walk around my boat, my vehicle, my trailer. Every morning I just do my quick loop around, then I come back upstairs, then I'll come back down, I'll do another loop. And yesterday it cost me a day's crabbing because I actually got to the boat ramp and I had all my gear in a place where I've got normally 2 tubs to store my crabs with all my gear in it. My brain just didn't click that the tubs weren't there. So I drove all the way to the boat ramp, actually just about ready to put the boat in the water, and I looked and said, something's missing. And I actually did another 2 loops around the boat. It's those, I don't know, that's my pre-check, pre-start. I know I go through, I look at tyres, I look at the hitch, because some people like playing games with commercial fishermen and they raise the hitch up and put the pin in so that as you're driving along, the trailer will come off the vehicle, etc. That's that part. Ollie, you were chatting about, I didn't see the shackle because of my computer here, but it's tick and flick. I used to have the same problem in the mining industry. I'd have people just go through tick and flick, etc. One of them was grid mesh. So grid mesh not secured properly, etc. I asked the guys to go through and check every piece of grid mesh in my concentrator, it was huge. They come back, 2 thumbs up. It's all good, boss. No dramas. I said, and I told them I was going to go out and check it. Yeah, no, all good. So this is complacency. Told them exactly what I wanted, etc. When I finished with it, it took me, for me, marking it up, because I said, I'll go through and I'll waste my time doing it, 2 boxes of paint cans, marking up just the corners where the missing clips were. It took maintenance 3 months to replace all the clips.
Wow.
But it was all good. So this is the shit that this dislodges, you go through into a tank and you're not coming out of it.
Yep.
So I think it's, if you've got tick and flick documents, etc., if somebody comes through and has a look at just randomly, has a look, it kind of puts the onus back on, or the threat of somebody coming through and double checking your work.
I think that's what we've done this time around. We're getting different people to do it every time. and after one another to sort of make sure that it's not one person always doing it and being complacent.
It's nothing like peer pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of you made a really great point. I think it was you, Ollie, that said, you're a safety expert and you've certainly been out and got your hands dirty, but it's the skippers on the boats that people listen to because they're there and they know the practicality of it. And I would say, the gold standard is, in fact, when it's not even just the skippers, it's everybody in the crew. Talking about, those big personal five, Brad. I really like the big personal five and link that into what I think it was Michael was talking about in terms of it was Ollie, I think, talking about the risk profile that we do have a real issue in our industry in some areas where one example is, as Ollie said, there's people who have a really high risk profile, i.e. they already jump out of planes, they already go cave diving, they have a big danger appetite. How do we help them shift their values to the purpose of the organisation? I love the way that you framed that, Ollie. It's another way of looking at that big personal five that Brad talked about in terms of how do we find the right way to get at people so they're thinking in terms of why they want to go home safely tonight, why they want to stay safe. And Michael, you touched on that as well in terms of the impact on people if they injure themselves. What impact is that later in life in times like retirement when I'm injured and I might not be thinking about tonight, but one of the things we don't think about enough is, lots of people think about their retirement and what I want to do when I retire. Will I be able to do all of that? Not just if I've had an accident, but if I have just had practices ongoing where I haven't been able to look after my body and I've got long-term repetitive strain injuries and back and knee and joint injuries from a long career in fishing. And I know when we did the Sustainable Fishing Families studies, we know that, the majority of fishers over the age of 50 have some degree of disability due to repetitive strain injuries. And there are ways that we can look to preventing them. So we've talked tick and flick. There was another question in here. How do you know that your skippers are really committed when you're not there? Could they just tick the boxes? I'll probably just open again. That question I think was for you, Michael. Do you want to just touch on that topic before we go to the next question?
Yeah, I think like with our skippers, mentioned there before, we're in constant daily dialogue with them. So if, we get a rundown of the day's activities, what's happened out on the water. And I'd like to think that they're all pretty good in reporting any problems that may have arisen during the day, or whether it be good or bad. And we, and with this new, this C-Flux system that we've introduced, they're having to daily, get on board and use it and be part of it there. So I think if they were just trying to, say all the right things or just go through the motions there, we would pick up on it sooner or later there. But I heard the comment, having someone, completely different just go through and do a check there, and seeing that, things are above board and the shackles and that are all compliant. So it's something that we, I'll certainly consider bringing on board for ourselves.
A question for all of you, and perhaps a parting question before we begin to wrap up. The question I asked Brad and Michael to consider, and I'll get Ollie's answer too. We've all been forced somewhat to take on additional regulation, rules, systems, etc. If you were, I guess, guiding a young person or a newer person into the industry who said, well, we don't like it, it's a pain in the backside, and you wanted to give them a little bit more than just, well, we do it because we have to. Ultimately, beyond the fact that it's the rules, all of you have developed those systems. All of you have developed values-based approaches in some way, shape or form. So I guess just some comments on that cost of safety. It does cost, it does take time, it does take effort, and that's dollars. What's the other side of that? What would be your parting comment to anybody who says, so what's the point? It seems obvious, but if you could, tell us, is the true cost of safety a negative or a positive?
It's a balance, Joe.
Yes.
It's a balance. You can't go about. It's easy for me. I'm a single sole operator. The only time I have any concerns on my boat is when my daughter or my son comes with me. And then my level of awareness goes up here. I just don't do certain things, or I don't operate in certain ways. But when I'm by myself, it's a balance. That's what it comes down to. I would feel for Oliver and for Michael knowing the legal obligations that they would have. It's no different. The mining industry is probably a little bit higher. Oliver might be able to comment to that because he's in both. Probably mining's a little bit higher, but legally there's a lot of obligations there that you need to manage and to factor into the businesses.
Absolutely.
Ollie.
Sorry. Go, Brad.
No, I'll let Ollie go because I was just going to have one comment around what worked well around safety or for skippers and stuff like that.
I'll keep going while you've got the floor.
All right. So one company I did work for, Sedgman Simic, once a week we had a safety meeting, and it was just to review any safety related topic or incident that happened above a certain level. And everybody in that meeting was once a week. It was from the boss of the company down to the safety manager and the person involved in the incident. And that individual or the superintendent or the supervisor, it'd be the skipper or the first mate, they were talking to the boss of the company, explaining how and why that safety incident happened. It's probably the best. It is one of the only times that I've seen safety really get embedded. It's like it was a focus because it was actions or consequences to your actions, proper consequences. No one likes getting chewed out in front of everyone.
Yeah. Interestingly, I think I shared in the first webinar, one of the largest teams I've led, our national managing director responsible for thousands of people, the first thing that he talked about every time he spoke to anyone was safety. And so there's a really strong message there in terms of what your manager thinks is important is what you will think is important. So whether that's, and we know that the first thing that a manager talks about is the thing that people assume he finds the most important. So having leaders that talk about safety up front, that get involved when things go wrong, does make a big difference. And I've seen too many organisations where the most senior person in the organisation is too busy to attend the safety conversations and those types of things, and that's never a good sign. That's a guaranteed pathway to tick and flick. If my manager's too busy to attend the meeting, then it's okay for me to be too busy to tick the boxes, or too busy to talk about it, so I'll tick the boxes. Any last words, Ollie or Michael? You've gone off mute.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Joe, I agree with what Brad said in regards where he's finding that right balance. I had one of our newest skippers yesterday only made a comment there that he was reluctant to originally sit for his skipper certificate because of the responsibilities involved. I'm glad that he made the choice to go ahead and do it because he's going to be a great skipper for us. But it's, as I said, it is ongoing. At the moment there, like what affects probably some of our fisheries here is a new fatigue management about to be introduced, and some of our wild catch fisheries do require long hours, and how we're going to manage all of that is going to be challenging to begin with. So I'm probably fortunate that the company I work with, the owner, she's very progressive in regards with safety training and management, and she she's always encouraging to go ahead and find out what's available and is not afraid to spend the money to try and improve our practices. So, you know, I'm pretty fortunate in that regard there. But as I said, it's trying to, you know, to balance everything out, you know, not only for the crew, but, you know, for the skippers and for the company.
Absolutely. Now we've run out of time. So Ollie, I think everyone took a huge amount of value from all of you. Everyone took a great amount of value from you, Ollie. I've just popped my email address in the chat. I would dearly love if all of you could flick me just a few words, joe@seafoodindustryaustralia.com.au, an idea or an action or something that stood out to you in today's session. It's only the second session. We want to keep these going. We want to grow them. We want you back next month. So please give us something you've taken or an idea for this forum that we can do to make it really valuable. I'm just hitting send now. You'll see a link pop up that you can copy and paste into your browser. It's a YouTube clip called Chinese Whispers. Have a look at it, and it's just a fun little reminder of how we need to do what Michael said, and that is keep ensuring that we watch people doing things to ensure that they know how to do it properly, because the messages can certainly get mixed between languages and between different people. Special thanks, Ollie, Brad and Michael, for your time, to my SIA team for helping me get set up. Next month we are talking about training, and we're also talking about digital SMSs. So please stick with us, help us keep growing this important conversation and sharing powerful stories. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everyone.